The first thing you need to do is find out where you're expected to be working, and that is going to be found on a sheet of paper that will be posted on the quiet room window. It may or may not have the specific reels that you're going to be running marked, but if it does not, it is typically understood that the person at the top of the list is going to be working on the left side of the press, and the person at the bottom of the list is going to be working on the right side of the press. Find out what reel stands are running, what the size of the rolls are, and also what the next setup is going to be. If there isn't anything posted on what the setup is going to be, ask either the folder operator or the supervisor what the next run is going to be. Once you know where you're supposed to be working, you need to go downstairs and start opening up paper. Paper has cardboard wrapping on it, and you have to take that off. Everyone is typically issued a head knife, and that is to take off the heads of the roll. Different people do this different ways. You just start cutting at the top and then work your way down. You go down to a height that you're comfortable with, and then tear the remainder of the cardboard off and dispose of it. Once you have the heads off of both sides of the roll, then it's time to take off the wrap. To do that, you just tear down one side of the wrap and then roll that into a cylinder and dispose of that below. Once you have the wrap removed, you need to push the roll onto a cart and then stage it to be ready for the run. As you clear the doorway, the clamp truck driver may or may not continue to drop rolls, and it is your duty to continue to keep all of those rolls stripped. If you have to open up half rolls, note they're going to be packed in packages of 2, and that they're going to have a cord placed inside the cord that you will have to remove. You can use a stick or anything that you can find to push the core from one side out the other side and then pull it out. There will also likely be a small piece of plastic in the end of the roll, which the technical term for it is actually called an asshole. Grab that and you will have to dispose of the core and the asshole. Next comes time to load up whatever reels are empty, so you have to take the newly stripped rolls and load them into the reel stands. The reel stands have 4 inputs on each arm. There's 2 toggles and 2 buttons. The top toggle moves the reel stand up and down. The bottom toggle moves the arms in and out. The bottom button, which is yellow, will release the arm so that it will drop the roll. The top button, which is green, will turn the brakes on and off. Make very certain that the roll is going the correct direction. And make sure that the roll is centered very carefully so that you do not damage the roll as you're loading it. Push it towards the reel stand. Make sure that the reel stand is at the correct elevation so that it will go through the core and not damage the roll, and then engage the reel arm. You will have to continue to hold the toggle the entire time as a safety to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And as long as the reel stand is set correctly, it will stop on its own. You don't have to worry about it going too far. Make sure that there is nothing between the reel arm and the roll, because if you put your fingers in there, it will absolutely remove them. Something I love telling people is don't worry, because it will grow back. After both arms are engaged, double check them to make sure that they're still both engaged, and then rotate the top toggle clockwise. Clockwise will always make it go up to lift the roll off of the cart, and then push the cart out of the way. After all of the reel stands are loaded, you now have to make pasters, do paperwork, and make sure that the reel stand is in automatic mode. If it's not in automatic mode, it's going to beep at you to let you know that you failed. And if you leave it in manual mode, it will also bring the press down, and then everybody will be mad at you. So make sure that you remember to put it in automatic mode. Whether you do the paperwork first, or put it in auto first, or do the paster first, it does not matter, but it is extremely important that all 3 of those things are done before you leave that reel stand. At the very top left of the paperwork, you have to put down the reel stand that you're working on. It will be listed on the side of the reel stand itself, and then your name and the date. Below that, you're going to be listing all of the rolls that you're using. Starting on the left is a heading for roll used before, so if the roll that you have in there is expired, then you put a checkbox or an X or whatever you want to put in there. And then the real arm that is in, it's either A or B, and then the roll number. The roll number is going to be on the side of the roll. That's the roll number. The next heading you have to worry about is size, and the size is either going to be a full, a half, a 3/4, or a 7/8. And the chance that it is a special width roll, like an 11 and 7/16 inch roll, then just write down that width. The next heading is the supplier, so P for Pond Array, HS for House Sound, N for Norpac, and whatever else that may or may not come out in the future. The last two headings you have to worry about are web break and roll condition. In the event that there's a web break, you have to write down the reason, and in the event that you open up a roll and there's a problem with it, you have to write down the reason for that as well. There is a list of codes on the right side that represent different problems that can occur, so you find the code that suits your problem and then use that code as the reason. The last thing you need to be able to do is make a paster. So the first thing you have to do is look for damage on the roll. You can make an absolutely great paster, but if there's damage on the roll, it's going to blow up anyway, and it's going to be exactly the same as making a poor paster. So you go to the side of the roll, and you tear off a sheet, and you start spinning the roll around. And as you're spinning it, you have to be looking very closely at the roll. You have to be looking for tiny tears, nicks, dings, smashes, slime holes, anything that looks out of the ordinary. If it doesn't look like flat paper, then there's something wrong. And not only do you need to be looking at the top of the roll, but you also need to be looking at the sides. Most of the time when there's water damage, it's going to be on the side of the roll. You might not see it on the top. Now if you do see damage on the top of the roll, what you have to do is you have to tear off more paper and you have to spin it around again, and you have to keep on doing that until all the damage is gone. Once you're confident that you have a healthy roll remaining, then you tear off whatever trash you pulled off and fold the top sheet back. You're going to have two rolls of tape. One of it is a black sensor tape and the other one is a blue paster tape. I use the black sensor tape to hold the sheet down and then use the shadow to line up the paster tape. Start by dropping the tape about a ½ inch from the side and then follow the shadow all the way to the other side and lay it down nice and flat. Once you got to the other side, grab your knife and cut off the roll at about 1/2 inch from the other side. You can use your knife to start peeling the top edge back and then peel the wax paper coating all the way off. Then grab the top sheet of paper and pull it back towards you as hard as you can without tearing it. The goal here is to get all of the air out from underneath that sheet of paper, then lay the paper down on the tape. I usually start in the center and pull down and slowly work my way out. After the top sheet of paper has good contact with the tape, fold the remainder of the paper back, and there's two ways to cut off the tail. The easy way is with your knife, and you just drag it across the roll, and make sure that when you're doing this that you do not damage the surface of the roll. Most of the time for a new guy, this is going to be what you're going to be doing all the time. But once you get good, you won't need the knife anymore. You can just grab the paper and tear it across and you'll get the exact same result. There's going to be tags on each side of the paster and you should remove those tags. The reason is because this paper is going to be moving at 30 feet per second and those little tags could either be flapping in the wind and catch onto something, or they could catch onto some of the ink and peel the paster apart. So it's a very good idea to remove those tags. Throw away whatever trash you have at this point and then grab a piece of black sensor tape. This roll has perforated edges to give you exact slices so that you will have the exact measurement you need every single time. Tear off a piece of the tape and lay it on the bottom right corner of the paster, approximately 1.5 inches from the top and 1.5 inches from the side. Then grab a piece of silver tape and that's going to go on the top left of the paster, also 1.5 inches from the top and 1.5 inches from the side. Always remember the black goes on the bottom right and the silver goes on the top left. That should give you a completed paster. The only thing you have left to do is to double check it, and to do that press the green button to turn the brakes off and spin the roll around. Make sure that you're looking at the face of the roll and both sides again to make sure that there isn't any damage. From time to time there will be some paper that's going to fall behind the roll, and as you spin the roll around it's going to catch that paper. In the event that you find any damage or if there's any paper that catches onto the paster, you have to redo the entire thing all over again. And that's okay because you're going to need a lot of practice. You're going to be doing this over and over and over and over until you get good at it. And then once you get good at it, you know what you're going to be doing then? The same thing over and over and over and over. From time to time you might have to either load or unload what we call a butt roll. A butt roll is just another name for a roll that has been somewhat used. So a butt as in a cigarette butt. Now if that roll is too small to where putting it onto a cart you would have to smash the arm into the cart, then you would have to use a lift. And that's just a block of aluminum that you can set on the cart. There will be a spacer between the roll and the cart. You have to be very careful when you're doing this because it can slide around. From time to time, you might find a roll that's going to have damage on it that may or may not be runnable. You're not sure. What you have to do in that point is you have to go and just simply tell your supervisor. From that point, it's going to be the supervisor's call on whether or not you just remove that roll, paste it off early, or just try it and see what happens. Over the years, we've gotten very creative on different ways that we can make a roll work. You can pack a wet spot with grease, you can hammer some of them out with a mallet, but most of the time it's better to be safe than to be sorry. Especially if you're running something like the main run, which is on a very tight deadline. Now, in the event that we are going to use a roll that has some damage or has a problem with it, it is also important the folder operator also knows. And the reason is because they're going to be the ones that have to deal with it. It is their job to have control over the paper that's going through the press. Until that pastes. When it comes time for a paster to paste, the reel is going to automatically cycle the roll up into position, and then it's going to start what it calls the paster sequence. The pasting roll is going to start spinning at a speed to match the speed of the press. The paster carriage is going to come down, and it's going to press the web against the new paster, and it will cut off the tail. And it will do that all automatically. The only thing that you really have control over is the new roll that's pasting. And it is your job to make sure that the new roll is lined up perfectly with the web that's going up. So you have to look at it, look at the edge of the roll, make sure that's lined up, and if it's not, then you have to move it in position. And in the event that anything happens, if there's a strange noise or if the paster starts peeling up, which happens, then you have to be standing there watching so that when that does happen, you can call up to the folder operator and inform them so that they can make the call on whether or not they're going to have to shut the press down to save the web. Now, hopefully it'll be a successful paster, and in the event that it is, it will cycle around and present you with a core. You eject the core, put a new roll in, put a new paster on it, write down the roll number on the paperwork, and put it in auto mode. And keep doing that over and over until the run is done. For every product that we run, there is what we call a draw. That's the number of copies that we're going to print. So you need to find out what the draw is, and you need to put down enough rolls that we can print that entire draw. Each roll is capable of printing 30,000 copies from that reel stand. So what that means is if the draw is 30,000 copies, you need to have at least one full roll. If the draw is 60,000, you need 2 full rolls. But also give yourself a buffer because there could be problems and complications along the way to make it so that we need even more than that. I personally try to put down enough rolls for myself that I have about a 10,000 copy buffer in case there's a problem. It's way better to have more paper than you need than to have to shut down in the middle of a run on account the rear room didn't have enough paper. That's the worst possible thing you can do. Eventually the run's going to finish and then you need to set up for the next run. If the reel stand stays the same for the next run, then you just keep on loading that up with paper. But in the event that the reel stand has to change, like from a full to a 3/4, then you have to move the reel arms out. So the first thing you have to do is eject the roll that's in there, put it on a cart, and get it out of the way. Then go to the screen and hit main menu and then reel arm setup. There's a few ways to change the reel arm width. I'm going to show you the easy way right now. Hit roll setup list to the top right and then you'll see a list of pre-programmed roll widths. On the very bottom you can see things like 1 is 1/4 roll operator, 2 is 1/4 roll center operator, so you just find the one you need. For example, if we wanted to go to a 3/4 roll op, then you can see at the top right that that is a 1. If you look on the roll list, the 3/4 rolls are 32.62, and you can see that the 3/4 roll with a 1 is the second program, so press the number 2 in yellow, and then hit main menu again. And something you're going to notice is that it's actually showing a half to the op instead of a 3/4 to the op. This is a fault in the software. It's going to do that every single time, so all you have to do is hit the roll type button, and it will change it to the proper 3/4, then hit start. At this point, the reel arms are going to start moving, and when it's done, it will be right where you need it to be. And here I'm going to show you how to do the same thing for a half roll to the drive, or what they call the gear. And a half roll to the op. Now you may from time to time be required to put in a special roll width that's not on that list, and to do that you hit Special Roll Setup. In this screen you can put in whatever number you want. Now we have a few listed on here for the 7/8 and for the 1/4. For example, for a 7/8 roll, the actual inch width of that is 38.06 inches. So in the roll width box, you type in 3806. You don't need to put in a decimal. Then hit enter. Then go to the roll center line and type in 272, enter. Now if below that it says OPER, then the 7/8 roll will be to the operator's side, and if it says gear, then it will move it to the gear side, or the drive side. When those numbers are correct, hit start, and the reel stand arms will move to the correct position. Making a changeover is probably one of the more difficult things for an FNG to figure out. It's not really that complicated, but there's a lot of steps, and if you mess up, you will end up making a lot of people very mad. The first thing you need to make sure you do is that you have the brakes off. If you do not have the brakes off, you will end up pulling the paper back, ripping it out of the folder upstairs, and you'll be giving all of your friends a lot of work. So let's say that you had a half roll running and you have to change it to a full roll. Now what you do is you make a paster as normally, but then you have to taper off the tail. If you do not, the tail will get caught somewhere up in the unit and it will rip it out, and you'll have to send up a new lead anyway. So make the paster and then judge where that half roll is going to end and start tapering off the rest of the roll. Now the key to making a good taper is that you just keep the roll spinning. So you tear the paper and you start pulling it back and you spin the roll. And as the roll's spinning, you slowly pull the paper off into the side. What so many people want to do when they do this is they want to just rip the paper off to the side and then just let it be done. But this is a problem. This is something that so many new guys do that is a complete failure, and it ends up really messing up the guys upstairs. A bad taper like that is going to fold over and it's going to cause them problems. So make sure that the taper is long all the way to the end. It should make no less than 1 revolution for every quarter change. And a lot of people, they get towards the end and they just want it to be done, so they'll just tear it off, and that is completely wrong. The end is actually the most important part of the taper. It's the easiest place for a fold over to occur, so make sure that it's an acute taper all the way to the end. So once you have the paster made up and you have a good taper, then it's time to move the roll up. Before you do anything, make sure you put a safe on. The safe is going to prevent the folder from moving, so that the folder operator won't accidentally move the press and rip the web out. But it's also to protect you. You really don't want a 2,000-pound roll moving right next to you. If the reel stand is in auto, just hit the cycle start button and it will automatically move the new roll up into paster position. When it stops, move around to the back of the reel stand, press the web onto the paster, and then cut off the web for the previous roll. Peel off the paster tape from the new roll, and then check to make sure that there is no exposed paster tape, because you don't want it getting stuck on anything on the way up. Once you're confident that everything looks good, move back around to the front, put the reel stand in manual, and press the up arrow to move the turret back into running position. Turn off the safe, and then call up on the radio and let the folder operator know that you're done. Alright, before we start, I just want to say that the reason I'm using this roll as an example is because it's already damaged beyond repair. This is more damage than I've ever seen on any roll in my life. Most of the time it's going to be down to about here, and you can just tear that off and reuse it, but this one is so badly damaged that we just have to return it. What I want to show you is that sometimes when you try and load a roll onto a cart, you have to do it on one of these turntables, and the turntables will spin. And this is something that's difficult even for veterans. And the trick is, once it gets to the cart, you have to be pressing on it with both arms, one on each side. You have to have control of the roll. If you just try and push on one side or the other, then it's going to spin. So I'm going to show you what it should look like. And now it's on. Something that a lot of new guys will mess up is they'll do just one side. And that's what ends up happening. Now you can see in the roll, I might be able to get it to go on this cart, but you probably won't. So you're kind of screwed at this point. You got several options. You get the fork truck driver to grab it and correct it. That's the best option, but that's not always an option. Like if it was further down there, you wouldn't be able to get a fork truck to it. Option 2, you grab the roll and spin it. I can't do it. This roll weighs 2,000 pounds. Now one of these half rolls, you can do that. Just put my side into it, and you can spin it like that. This roll weighs 1,000 pounds. So with this roll, 2,000 pounds and also more surface on the ground makes it really difficult to move. These plastic pipes that we've got on the ground, they're designed for impact. Well, not really designed for impact, but we use them for impact. So option 2 is you take the roll and you smash it into it. And if you smash into it hard enough, it will correct. But by smashing into it at an angle like that, you're going to be putting a lot of damage, a lot of pressure right there on that corner. So you're going to have a flat spot in the roll whenever you go to make a paster on it. You grab something like this. This is a cutting rubber. It's made out of some kind of plastic, rubber, nylon, I'm not sure what. But this one's completely used up. It has cuts on every single side. So this is trash. But we can use these in the rear room, and we use it as a pivot. And as long as it's centered, you should be able to grab the roll and spin it easily. Now it's straight, so you can easily put the roll onto the cart the way you're supposed to. The only problem with this is that it does damage the roll. You can see this mark. So you want to try and avoid doing that. And plus it's just a lot of extra work. If you work long enough, eventually you are going to see a web go out. When that happens, no matter where you are in the rear room, you need to drop what you're doing and get to the reel stand with the problem. If you're the man that's attending to the reel, then you need to grab a small piece of tape and use that to tape down the drive side of the web onto the roll. Then make a nice long taper all the way to the operator side. You need to be on the lookout for the lead-up tape that's going to be coming at you, and when it does come at you, you need to line it up with the drive side of the roll. It is extremely important that it is lined up so that when it goes up through the unit, it does not get caught on the drive side of the blanket cylinders. Pull the lead-up tape back so that you can see how much you have. And when you've got about 8 feet left, tell your helper to stop the chain. Okay. Spray down the lead-up tape and then stick it onto the drive side of the roll so that it is parallel with the edge of the roll. The goal here is to make it go up straight. That is the most important thing, otherwise it will tear out. Make sure you peel up that small piece of tape that you used to attach the web at the very beginning. And once you're confident that the lead-up tape is secured onto the roll, tell your helper to send the lead up. And this is the tricky part. With one hand you have to spin the roll so that the web doesn't get too tight and it tears out the web. And with the other hand, you have to keep some tension on the web that's going up. As long as there's a little bit of tension on the web that's going up, it will go up straight. But if you just let it go and you let a bunch of slack develop in it, it'll wander from one side to the other and it will definitely tear out the web. So you have to keep the roll spinning so that it doesn't tear out the web, but you also have to keep the web slightly taut so that it goes up straight. When the web gets to the top of the press, they will call down and ask for slack, and you continue pushing the roll to provide slack in the web.
Okay, stop the chain, slack it. Copy, it's on remote, you got slack. Rolling.
Until they tell you to let it walk. Letting it walk means letting the roll go, and at that point the press will start to pull the web by itself.
Hey, let it walk.
Okay, it's walking.
Thank you, sir.
At the end of the night, you have to clean the unit blankets. Now, it's everybody's responsibility to get their own solvent, but one person is generally tasked with doing that, and if you want to be nice, it could be you. When our company orders solvent, we get it in drums, and eventually those drums will deplete, at which point you will have to replace the drum. You'll need a dolly to transport the drum because they are fairly heavy, so just grab a dolly, bring it over to the drum, and then take it into the ink room. There's going to be 2 caps on top of the drum, each with different thread sizes, and our pump uses the fine thread size. So just take one off, and if it's the wrong one, then take off the other one and use that. Drop the pump in, spin it around until it's tight, and then you're good to go. If there's 6 people, we need 6 buckets. It doesn't take a lot. We usually put in about 1/2 inch to 1 inch of solvent in each bucket, and then you can fill up the remainder of the bucket with hot water. There's 3 surfaces that are required to be cleaned. The first surface is the stainless steel guards that are on the outside of the unit. Then there's the blanket cylinders and the plate cylinders. All of those 3 surfaces must be cleaned every single time. When you start, there's going to be plates on the plate cylinders, and you use a suction cup to pop them off. When you get to this point, you should already know what the setup is going to be, so if it's a 1/2 to the drive, you pop off these 2 plates, and if it's a 3/4 to the op, then you pop off these 3 plates. For this example, I'm going to be setting up for a full, so I'll be pulling all the plates. To prevent it from moving, use a safe. Always use a safe when you're going to work on a machine, every single time. So first press in the safe, then clean the exposed surface and dry it, then turn the safe off, spin the cylinder around, put the safe back on, and repeat. Keep on doing that until all of your blankets and cylinders are clean. There's 5 things at the end of the night that the rear room operators are responsible for. The first one is the roll down fire doors. The reason we put them down every night is to save money on air conditioning and heating. It's the responsibility of all of the rear room operators to make sure that they're down at the end of the night. The fire doors you have to be careful with because it's tempting to just grab the chain and yank it down and let the thing fall. However, if you do that, there's a good chance that the chain is going to jump off the track and then you're going to be in trouble. So you have to let it down slowly and make sure that you have one hand on one side of the chain and the other hand on the other side of the chain while it's going down. That way you can control the velocity and the tautness of the chain. The second thing is the brown wrap, or the cardboard, or the wraps that you pull off of the rolls. That is generally the responsibility of the left side reel room operator. So if you're running reels 11, 13, or 14, that's going to be your job. At some point in the night, you have to take that cart out to the cardboard compactor and drop all the cardboard into that compactor and compact it. The trash that's next to the reel stands is the middle rear room operator's responsibility. He has to take that out to the compactor. The tip cart that's outside that contains all the trash from upstairs, that is the right side rear room operator's responsibility. So he has to go out at the end of the night, open up that door, pull out those tip carts, and empty all the trash into the compactor. And the last thing that the rear room operators have to do is white waste, or cores. Every time a roll pastes, there's going to be a core, and every time you do a paster, you should have a small roll of white paper. Now those 2 go onto the racks that are next to the clamp truck dock, and make sure the cores are stacked with the cores and the trash is stacked with the trash. And the reason we do this is because we recycle it and we get money back. Now that is the basic gist of being a rear room operator. If you can manage to do all that, then you've got it down. Beyond that, there is going to be times where you have to do some detail work. That means cleaning the units, cleaning the press, cleaning the reel stands, and just general upkeep, maintenance. And it's all required in order to keep the press running. And if you can do that, and if you can show up to work, and you can show up to work on time, and you can make pasters without failing, and just in general not fuck up, then you'll make everybody happy. And after you've figured all that out, the next step is unit operator. And I'll be talking about that next.